So we don't have a leader. Who's going to take the lead?
Could I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that either Josh or Will lead us.
Josh.
Josh did it last time.
So
So
Josh is our chairman tonight.
All right, Josh is chairman. You guys want to vote on the motion, or Josh?
Aye.
Aye, we all say aye.
I suppose I have been voluntold. Well, okay. So we are without both our chair and our vice chair, so here I am. Let's get started. Welcome to Planning Commission tonight. We will jump into the agenda, which is the first item is opening and approval of the minutes from May 12th, 2022 meeting. Any comments or questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, second item. And maybe because every item on here is a conditional use permit, I'll just preface it and maybe hopefully I don't steal staff's thunder here, but so conditional use permits, so I won't have to repeat myself. The task of the Planning Commission is to review each application, and if we see, or we are tasked with discussing and trying to find out any foreseeable detrimental impacts that will come to the neighborhood or the area for each proposed use. And if we do see such impacts, then we are just tasked with imposing conditions to mitigate those impacts, if we can find conditions, which in almost every instance we can. So that's what we're going to be looking at: is what are the impacts and how can we mitigate those by conditions. So let's go to the second item, which is a conditional use permit for Kurt Fashion Power is my best guess. I apologize for Cinnamon Creek Construction at 849 East Westbrook Road for a major home occupation B, and we'll turn some time to the staff.
Tonight is my big moment.
All right.
All of these conditional use permits. Melinda gets one. I'm going to let her have one tonight. So. And it's been a year since I've been with Planning Commission. So,
Happy 1 year anniversary.
thank you. We'll celebrate later. So,
Yes.
This first conditional use permit is for Cinnamon Creek Construction, LLC at 849 East Westbrook Road, and it is a major home occupation. Mr. Fashion Power is doing, he's a contractor, and he has he has 8 employees that do not come to his home. They will meet at the job site. His office personnel works from their homes. His business does work with state, city, and federal construction only, and they do most of their work with UDOT, State of Utah, Hill Air Force Base, Camp Williams, City of Clearfield, and they would really like to come do work for Kaysville City. So he has 2 trucks that are parked in his driveway. So you can see right here, this is the aerial view. Morgan Elementary is right there behind him. And then if you go, this is the street view of the home. He has 2 trucks at most that will be parked. No equipment, it will be stored on site because they have a laydown yard in Layton to store all their equipment and materials. And staff is recommending approval for this conditional use permit for Kurt for Cinnamon Creek Construction, LLC at 849 East Westbrook Road for a major home occupation B.
Okay, so one other item of sort of procedure tonight. What we'll do is each item as it comes up, we'll have the staff introduce the item, and then if the applicant is here, we'll ask you to come up to the microphone here. So if Kurt is here, if he could come up to the front, and then if we have any questions or if you want to add anything to what staff has said, please let us know.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
The only thing that I'm doing out of the actual house is that I've taken one of the bedrooms and I've converted it into an office. I actually I did include a picture of that, but that's really all I'm doing is I'm doing that. But I do a lot of federal and state work, and I'm required to have a business license for the community that I'm living in, and so that's why I'm applying for the license.
Okay, thank you. If you want to stay up here for just a minute, any questions from the commission for the applicant?
Are you going to have many visitors coming by during the day that you would expect that could be a nuisance to some neighbors?
No, not at all, no. All of my work is out at, like, to give you an idea, I have a job going out at Camp Williams and stuff like that. We conduct all of our meetings out on site of our jobs that we have going on. So at like Hill Air Force Base and out at Camp Williams, we work right out there on site. We conduct our meetings out there. No one comes to my house.
Okay.
So as far as delivering materials and stuff like that, like I said in my my thing, the only thing I have is Amazon delivers me some goodies for me once in a while, but that's really about all I have that comes to my house.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. You can have a seat, and then we will.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, have a discussion. Any comments or
You ready for
items
a
from the commission?
You ready for a motion?
Yes, please.
I would make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for Kurt Passionpower for Cinnamon Creek Construction at 849 East Westbrook Road as a major home occupation PB as described.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second. We'll start the voting on this end with me. Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. Let's go to our next item, which is a conditional use permit for Ivory Homes for a model home and sales office at 1407 East Orchard Ridge Lane.
Thank you, Chair. Ivory Homes has applied for, as you said, a conditional use permit for a sales office and a model home at the location described. They're hoping to be able to get in there pretty quickly with their sales trailer. The address is 1407 East Orchard Ridge, and it would be on their lot number 205.
Where is that? Is that up east of Highway 89?
Yeah.
The northeast corner of Kaysville, I think, is about as far as you can go
okay.
northeast.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So here's just an overlay of the subdivision and the lot they'll be locating that trailer on. This just shows that the area up there is zoned R18. Ivory Homes did also provide a rendering and the specs of what the sales trailer would be until they get that model home constructed. They will have the sales trailer open Monday through Friday from 11 to 7, Saturdays from 10 to 7, and would be closed on Sundays. They will also have a parking area on the lot made of road-based gravel, and then when the model home is complete, people will just park in the driveway. We recommend that the conditional use permit be approved, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And we do have Jake from Ivory Homes is here tonight for questions as well.
Yeah, come on up. Any questions from the commission, or actually, if you'd like to add anything else, anything that staff missed?
No, I think that's pretty good. We're going to try to get a trailer up and running pretty soon while the model home is under construction, a more permanent model home. Construction's taking longer than we're used to right now, which is why we're really wanting to have a sales trailer while the model home is being constructed for the next probably 8 or 9 months. At that point, we would transfer from the sales trailer to the model home to continue those same kind of hours.
And then you remove the sales trailer from the site.
Correct, yeah. Sales trailer moves, all signage and everything is taken out of that lot. And then we would build a home.
Will you tell us your name again, sorry?
Sure, I'm Jake Bauer
Okay.
with Ivory.
Okay, thank you. Just stay up here for just a minute. Any questions from the commission?
Seems pretty straightforward.
I have one question, and maybe this is a staff question, or you can answer it. when the trailer goes away and it becomes the actual home, will the conditional use transfer, or will they need to come back again for that?
Is the model home on a different lot than what because you're building the model home right now, right? And then, that's what I...
Correct, yeah, the model home, we just barely started construction, so we dug a hole. It's on lot 201, which if you have the map up right there. So the trailer's gonna be on lot 205. Lot 201 is the corner lot that is to the southwest of that. So they're basically right across the street from each other, almost kitty corner, essentially. So yes, different lots, but yeah, same use, just right next to each other.
I would hope by then we have been able to process a text amendment that would make model homes permitted use. So,
Because if not, because it's a different parcel, it would probably have to come back, right?
yeah, we didn't include in our agenda the parcel or any information for parcel 201, just 205, but,
It would probably be a rubber stamp, but still technically, without an amendment, like you said, you'd have to probably come back. Okay.
yeah.
Well, I agree with kind of what Will said. It seems pretty straightforward. I should have really prefaced the first item on the previous item too. I think the common concerns with a model home, for example, are, maybe it brings more traffic. There's parking that might be in excess of a typical residential neighborhood, though not usually, I don't think. But those are the kinds of impacts that we might see. And, if there's enough parking, just sounds like there would be. I don't personally see the need for additional conditions, but any comments from the commission or a motion?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Just how much do you get less traffic with just the sales trailer than when you have the model home completed?
I would say yes, because a lot of times what brings people to a model home is the home itself.
Right.
So it would be less than typical. But yeah, with the sales trailer, you're only going to really get sales inquiries, the design lookers, and the people that just want to check out the floor.
The lots.
Yeah, you can't lose those.
Got it. Thanks.
May I make a motion?
Go for it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a conditional use permit for Ivory Homes for a model home and a sales office at 1407 East Orchard Ridge Lane.
Can I, before there's a second, can I make a comment or propose something? I think we often will say how long it's going to be for, like until the lots are done or until all the lots are sold, I guess. Maybe a comment, if staff has any input on that, or if Jared, what do you think about that?
Can I just amend that to say that the sales office would be removed when the model home is complete? Is that okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the idea.
We'll get it in a minute.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion second. We'll start with Commissioner Doxey.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you. We'll go to the next item. And maybe I ask this of staff. Technically, these are four different applications, but it's all for the same, it appears, for the same applicant, for the same use. Do we need to treat every single one separate, or what's your thoughts, staff?
So this is a little weird because some of them are in such close proximity. You may want to look at adding additional requirements or ensuring that those that are in close proximity do not, I guess, cause more issues with the neighborhood. But yes, they should, I think, be considered individually because they're all separate addresses.
Okay. So I already have a few questions, but maybe I'll just let you guys take it away and then we can ask questions.
So, well, Mindy put together this map here that just shows the 5 different locations in the city where all of these are being located. One of them is already licensed. Came in before we had the instructional home occupation ordinance that was put in place last year. So, but the other 4 are new, coming in under the ordinance for the first time. And then, like I said, we have 2 on the same cul-de-sac, one kind of right across the street from the other. And so I think having the context of where all 5 of these are located is helpful. I don't know, it might be a little bit tricky and clunky to handle them all separately, but we did put the 2 on Francis Circle right next to each other on the agenda, because I think that would be the one that might cause the most concern.
Well, and I was just going to say, so the one that's orange is on Thomas Drive. That is not affiliated with Hunsaker Swimming. So I think as we started, yeah, hold on just a sec. Yeah, hold on a second. So
We will have you come up in just a minute, yeah.
And maybe I'll just back it up just a little bit.
Yes.
So if you guys remember last year, this came to Planning Commission, and we had a pool that had applied to have a swimming instruction there at their home, and we realized at that time that it was part of the Hunsaker Swimming, and that they were having instructors there that were not related, which in our major home occupations, you have to have a related relative working in that home. And so we came up with the instructional home occupation, and I left one for you guys each on your right there by you so that you can look at it. And the thought behind this was that you would have these places that have pools, courts, whatever, that they could have these, that they could do their major home business there under an instructional home occupation. So the Hunsakers they have their own conditional use permit. They applied for that in 2011 when they first opened up their swimming pool, and they had their kids working with them. And it sounds like they've had 6 kids over the years kind of just filter through. But what it sounds like is that it's been a very popular business model, and so they needed to find other places. You only have so much room in your own pool and so much time during the day. And so it sounds like they started reaching out to other residents in Kaysville, and we actually had, is it the one on 1350?
Yes, the triangle.
So the one at the turquoise one, they've actually had swimming lessons going on for the last 2 years. I think the first year they were able to get an application or a license, and then last year I think is when we realized the turquoise one the little. So we've got the application, and so Ms. Hunsaker and I kind of just came together and just found a way that we could, because each individual, they're going to have different hours, perhaps different amounts of students coming and going. That's why we felt that they all needed to be independent. So we have had one call come in from a concerned resident in regards to this, and the call is for 908 South, the red one. And I don't think when that resident called, they didn't know about the one on 942. However, the concern was that there would be more traffic being added, because if you read, it would be putting parking out onto Thomas Drive, where the home or the pool that's right there on 1355, the orange one, it has 12 students at a time, so it's group instruction. And so their concern was that there's a bend on the road, you've got traffic on the side of the road, you've got parking going on, and just that a lot of traffic. They don't even have sidewalks down there at the time, and so the concern was just having multiple homes with swimming pools at the time. How is that going to work logistically? So that's the only call that we've had from residents in regards to any of the signs that we put out through the town or the city. So I don't know how you guys want to do this. If you want to do each address and we discuss, the nuances for each one of them, or.
Okay, so this is my inclination, see if the commission has any heartburn about this. If we bring up the applicant, we can ask some questions about all of them collectively, and then we can have a discussion. And actually, I also want to, after the applicant comes up, we don't typically do this with conditional use, but there's not very many people here, so open it up. If anyone has any comments, I would be curious if the neighbors have comments that are here, let them come up. And then we can discuss how we want to treat them, if we want to really narrow in on each one individually, treat them as a whole, or we can just have that discussion. What do you think? Okay. So if the applicant is here, if you could come up, tell us your name, and then maybe you could just give a little more background that staff didn't give us.
Hold on, Chair, can I add one thing
Yes.
really quick? There is, and I'm glad she's here to explain this, in the instructional home occupation, we've got it set that there has to be, is that under number?
The last one, second.
On number 16, that we have a 10-minute between scheduled sessions to reduce pickup and drop off. And I'll just have Ms. Hunsaker explain kind of their role, you know, their business model and how they work around that. Well, we have it in the, you know, in our ordinance here. I'm not sure if we can, in a condition, allow for things or whatever. So with that being said.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go over all this with you. First, I wanted to introduce our pool owners. That's who we have here. So right here is Heidi. She is the daughter of the Websters, and they're at 908. It's the first one, 908 South Francis Circle. And then we have Emily. Emily lives right next door to them. She's at the 942 Francis Circle. And then we have Scott Jones, and Scott is on Smith Lane, and so he's the pool that's just on Smith Lane. And Tiffany McCready in the back, and Tiffany is in that turquoise, that wedge one at the end of the cul-de-sac. This is my son Tucker. Tucker is responsible for the expansion of our business. He's the visionary who could see that we couldn't keep up with the demand, and he put us all online. We do scheduling, you know, we had to get a virtual queue to do signups because the demand has been so great. And we post our summer and sell out that day. We cannot keep up with the demand. That's why we've expanded. The McCready's, this will be their third summer hosting pool swimming lessons at the end of their cul-de-sac. The Websters, it will be their second summer. What's interesting with Emily's pool is that's actually where it all began, that corner lot, because my two oldest sons, I was friends with the owner that lived there before Emily did, and she knew my boys were teaching swimming lessons and said, hey, they can teach at my pool if your boys will teach my daughters how to swim. So they taught there for two summers, and then we built a pool in our backyard and started lessons in earnest in 2011. And so it's kind of coming full circle with Emily. So I don't know if you want to go back to that map. I can show you. We're just doing abbreviated sessions. So if you look at the Smith Lane pool, the green one, the lessons there start at 8:40 in the morning, and they will go until 11:40. We teach private lessons only, no group lessons. We have one instructor for each student, and we only have 4 instructors in the pool at a time. When we got our conditional use permit, they told us we could have 5. We didn't like having that many in the pool. We thought it was just too crowded. And so we've limited all of our pools to no more than 4. So they'll have 4 instructors, and it's 20-minute increments. I know in your ordinance, you built in this requirement that there be a 10-minute break between sessions. And I spoke with, I think it might have been the city attorney or somebody who was with planning last fall, and we talked about this because our lessons are only 20 minutes. So we only have, often we'll have like one family that takes up all 4 spots. So you might have 1 car there, you might have 2 cars there. Sometimes you may have 4 if when people signed up, they just took individual spots. And so what I was told at the time was, I think it's going to work fine because you don't generate the kind of traffic that a group swimming school does. Like the one in the orange, they'll have 12 students, and so you're going to have 12 cars, possibly, maybe you'll have 10. And then as you switch sessions, you're going to have that many cars again. We might just have 2 or 3 cars, and then they switch over. So there's not as much traffic, but we didn't build in a 10-minute space between each session because we only have, well, because of what I was told last fall, that it was going to be okay. And then we just have 4 kids in the pool at any given time. That's probably the thing I'm most concerned about, helping you understand and making sure that we're all on the same page and making sure that that's okay. So the Smith Lane pool had swimming lessons at their pool. That's Scott. And they had the lessons there. We like to have the parking in the elementary school parking lot is right across the street from them. There's plenty of parking on Smith Lane and into the cul-de-sac if necessary. So I don't know if you want to, I know you want to go through them one by one. Maybe you can ask me questions that you have.
Okay, yeah, so let's have any questions from the commission that you might want to ask as a whole or specific ones, or what do you guys think?
One question I have, it'd be helpful if, so you said with the one on Smith Lane, it would be the maximum of 4. Is that true for all of them except
Yes.
the 1355?
That's not our business.
Okay.
And they're group lessons that have at least as many as 12 students.
So these other 4 are yours, and they would all be a max of 4?
Maximum. We never do
Okay.
more than that. And also, I don't think I mentioned this, the 2 pools next door to each other, one has lessons from, the red one, from 8:20 to 11:20. Then there's a 40-minute break, and the other one starts at noon and goes until 3.
Okay.
So they're not going to be at the same time. We wouldn't do that.
So this is maybe a question, clarification for staff then. This orange one is only shown to just say there's already an instructional home occupation in existence?
I added that on there because of the phone call from the resident that was the call. I would not have known that it was there.
Yeah.
Until that phone call came in, which I think is great. It's opening up a
Yeah.
great conversation. So the concern was that their group, they've got this group lessons going on with 12 cars there versus, the 4. And then in the cul-de-sac, they'd be staggered, so.
So was the comment from whoever this was saying that they already recognize, like they're saying, hey, when
The street's full.
the street's full when these things are going on? That's what they said, basically.
Because I believe they park in the cul-de-sac that is on Cornish. So they'll park in Cornish, they'll park on Thomas. And apparently, because of the early morning sun, when they come around that bend, there's no sidewalk, there's walkers, there's people on bikes. The sun is coming up, and it's just a little scary going around that bend. So that was the only concern. They're all for business. They weren't against business. Just the concern was children home during the summer. It is just a seasonal thing, so yes, we can live with it. But if there's a way that we can maybe not have to, like, quote unquote, live with it, and there's a way we could work around it.
Not that this is required, but do you have any idea what their schedule is in comparison to your
I did
schedule?
look it up. So they're actually teaching from 7 a.m. till 5 in the afternoon.
Okay.
And I haven't seen that the parking, maybe Emily, or Tucker, do you have a comment? Emily, do they park by your house? No. For those lessons? No. They're about 600 feet away from Emily's lot.
I was just going to say, if I could add something, was
If you, just come up to the microphone. Sorry. We need to make a record so that your wonderful voice is on the microphone. Tell us your name and then tell us what you're going to say.
Tucker Hinsaker, the son. But no, you can ask my mom. I'm probably as conscious and more sensitive than anyone about parking, and I just don't want to be a burden on anyone. So
Yeah.
I remember thinking last time and knowing, I went to high school with one of the girls. I grew up at the house that's in the orange. And last year when I was going to make sure that things were running smoothly, almost every day at the Francis Circle Pool, the cars never came even close to where the Craythorns house is. Our teachers would park on Thomas Drive, along the Craythorns, the side of their yard.
Craythorn is Flinders. You've got it in your agenda as Flinders. It's the blue road.
But we'd have 2 or 3 teachers' cars along the blue, and then we'd have a handful of cars in Francis Circle. But I never ever saw anyone for the house, the Moon's house, the orange one, park anywhere near us. There was always plenty of space, and like my mom pointed out, I made sure when we were scheduling these pools that they wouldn't be operating at the same time, thinking I didn't want to double traffic, and instead it's this pool, and then 40-minute break carries on to the next one. So I know I'm a little bit biased, I guess, but I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
it's a problem, I would have tried to figure it out myself, and I never noticed anything.
Yeah.
That's just my personal experience.
Tucker's extremely conscientious. So, in fact, we live on a cul-de-sac, and we had the swimming lessons students parking on our cul-de-sac, and our neighbors were incredibly patient with us. We'd throw parties at the beginning of the summer and the end of the summer, and let them use our pool and try it. But it was still traffic.
Raise the age limit as well. 'Cause
We
I
did
felt
that,
bad
yeah.
Kids were crying and.
We used to teach 2 years and up, but now we do 3, just so there's not as much noise. And now we're having people park over by the trail and then walk around, so there's no traffic on our street. Our neighbors are much happier, but this was Tucker, he's very, very conscientious about keeping the neighbors happy. And he'll probably worry about it more than anybody else.
Should I say?
Yeah, you can have a seat if you want. Or if we have more questions, we may call you back up. I guess I have one question then. So if we take the purple and the red, I guess those are the colors I would call them. So I think we are tasked, Commission, as saying, what's the worst case scenario, and are we okay with that, and should we impose conditions? So worst case scenario, there could be 4 instructors at each, so that's 8, right? And then another 8 students, so there could be 16 people, not necessarily 16 cars, but 16 people there, all kind of in that on those 2 properties at once. Is that correct? Or is that okay? So if it's not correct, just tell me, correct me.
Well, the blue and the red operate at different times.
Okay,
They do not overlap.
got it.
One is 3 hours in the morning, 40-minute break, and then the afternoon. So no, there won't be parking for both pools.
So when you do the conditions then per 908, you may just want to say that they operate in the AM hours. The 942 would be PM hours. That would maybe be an additional condition that you set based on what the applicant is.
Could I make a
Yeah.
suggestion? That maybe not mandate AM for one and PM for the other in case they need to switch sometime, but just say they can't operate at the same time.
And I apologize if you already said this, but how many, so will there be 4 instructors for the 4 students? So you'd have potentially 8 individuals in the pool.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And so you'd have, and I'm guessing your instructors all come in a different car.
They can bike in, we can have them park some distance away. I know on Smith Lane, the Smith Lane pool, we have them park at the school. At the McCreevy pool, the blue triangle, we have them park outside the street or at the very end of the street, so they're completely out of the way. And we're happy to, I think Tucker can
They're not
answer
in front
that.
of any houses either.
Yeah.
I made sure to put them on a section of curb that was.
Yeah, where did you have them park last
It
time?
was along the backyard of 1357 West, by that tree. See that tree on the side?
And
So
then-
that seemed like the most out of the way spot for anyone in anybody's way.
Yeah.
Well, and Emily's got a long driveway, and I imagine the teachers need to, they can park.
Sometimes I do.
Inside her,
Yeah.
she has a very long driveway, and I don't think you
And
mind
the first summer I took,
the teachers there.
that first summer I took it against all the neighbors. Questions like that. So.
Come on up. Yeah, just come up and tell us your name and then say what.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm representing the Websters at 908 itself. They have a large circular driveway in the front of the house that does not impede their driveway or anything, and it's always open.
Okay.
It's quite large. You could fit 4
Yeah.
cars.
That's helpful. Yeah. I have a question for staff. I think I could guess the answer to this, but let's just throw it out there. So, personally, I'm inclined to kind of rely on the strictures of the ordinance, the instructional home occupation ordinance as it is, not impose more conditions, but put the caveat in there that says, approve the conditional use, no conditions beyond the code. But if there are, if for some reason citizens see, neighbors or what have you, see I don't know how we craft this. I'm just wondering if we could make a mechanism where if it gets bad, so to speak, we could come back and reevaluate it. I know that's hard because if we're saying there's no conditions and the applicants are saying, hey, we're abiding by the conditions you imposed, despite what the neighbors are saying, we're still within the confines of what you said, we traditionally wouldn't have a mechanism to bring them back. I'm just wondering if we could put that type of a mechanism. Does that make sense?
I suppose you could. There is already, I suppose, a process for that, which, you know, generally, if you're violating your conditional use permit, we get complaints at a staff level. We just go and address that through code enforcement, you know, try and get the business or the property owner to come into compliance, which I think we would try that route anyway, so we wouldn't have to wait until a planning commission meeting to address that. But there would be, I don't know, you probably get into some questions that I couldn't feel real comfortable accurately answering.
Yeah.
As far as, because usually you have, once a conditional use permit is issued, you know, there's a process to go through if those conditions aren't being met. And then, you know, revoking a conditional use permit or revoking a business license is not as straightforward as it may seem, just because it gets complicated with the legalities of what you can and can't. I mean, can you revoke a business license for violating without a conviction of an ordinance violation? It gets a little technical.
Yeah. See, I guess maybe I'm just thinking out loud here. What my thoughts are is I don't see that there's going to be a problem, and so I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just say yes, approved, no conditions beyond what's in the ordinance. But if for some reason we aren't realizing the impact, because we've never had this, at least since I've been on the commission in a while, we've never had this all at once where they're so close, relatively close, even though they're going to be all operating separately, which I think is an important point. So we don't really know what's going to happen. And I'm just wondering if we could say, I don't know. Any comments, yay or nay from the commission? Yeah, what, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Last summer, they were closed because the complaint came in, the call that you received concerned 902, the Webster pool. And we operated out of that pool last summer. And the Moons were running swimming lessons out of their pool. So, you know, I don't know. Again, it's shorter hours than the Moons. And also the Moons only teach, I think they only have 5 sessions during the summer. They do, and then a late summer in August. Whereas we go every week of the summer. So it would be 6 weeks where there'd be overlap. It is seasonal, and so it's not like we're doing this year round. I mean, I'm obviously we're very mindful of these kinds of concerns, and that's why we took parking off of our street.
So you said your sessions generally last 6 weeks. Is that what you said?
No. What I said is the Moons only teach 6 weeks, according to their website.
But your sessions, it's like.
We start next week at Ivory pool, and we're scheduled for 9 weeks, but then we'll add in August once we know what our teachers' availability. It probably won't be at all 5 pools though. Okay. It would probably be 2 or 3 pools depending on what the demand is. And that is typically the first 2 weeks of August.
Okay. So the sessions are 20 minutes, but it's like a 9-week season for each person that signs up for the lesson?
When somebody signs up, they're signing up for 1 week. And it's a 20-minute private lesson. So they'll come Monday. Oh, and the Moons are Monday through Thursday, by the way. Ours are Monday through Friday.
Okay.
And so when a parent signs their children up, they'll sign up for a 20-minute lesson, and they'll come Monday through Friday, and it's a private lesson. Sometimes they'll sign up for 2 weeks. They often sign multiple children because they can do them all at the same time. You know, we'll have sometimes 4 kids from one family in there for the same 20 minutes they're in, then they're out. So, but again, I want to make sure you remember and understand, because this is a sticking point and we are not in compliance with the ordinance on the requirement that there's a minimum of 10 minutes between scheduled sessions to reduce pickup and drop-off vehicle congestion. So, which obviously is an issue if you've got a dozen students, but I just want to make sure that we don't skip over that and that you're aware that if you grant us the conditional use permit, that maybe something needs to be said about that.
Well, what I will say to that, to the commission, and staff can have input, is I don't know that that is a legislative decision that has already been made. If we are putting a condition that is contrary to that, we are legislating in a forum that we have not noticed or followed law to do so. So long story short, we can't do that. We have to stick with that, is I guess what I'm saying. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we could put something in place that would be more stringent, but we couldn't do anything that was less strict than what has been put in place.
Yeah.
But I think that depending on the way you interpret it, that could mean, I mean, if you have, yes, there's 4 individual sessions, but they're happening from 11 a.m. to 11:20, and then your next session, private session, isn't until 11:30.
It's at 11:20.
Okay, so I think that would not work based on what the ordinance is.
And that's the problem, because I was told that we could do that, and we've sold our lessons. I mean, I was told that.
Sure.
And that I just needed to make sure I covered that with everybody. And
Yeah.
that's...
Well, I don't know who, I mean...
I don't remember, I'm sorry I didn't write the name down, and it was last November, and I don't remember if it may have been the city attorney.
I doubt the city attorney would have said that.
Well, whoever said it, let's just assume that it was said. We trust that it was said.
Yeah.
The problem is whoever told you that was wrong.
The ordinance says what it says.
Right. Which is unfortunate, and I wish that wouldn't have happened, but the ordinance requires that. And even if we all, I think we probably all agree with you that what you're doing seems to be fine, but the ordinance doesn't allow it. So we either, I guess, I understand the predicament that you're in now, given what you just said.
Well, that's, I mean...
Yeah, go ahead.
It would have been prudent to not sell sessions until you knew what conditions were going to be imposed and until you received the conditional use permit. So, I mean, just, it seems like maybe the cart was put before the horse, but I don't see how we could get around that, but...
There's nothing we can do.
Yeah. We can't get around it tonight.
No.
Even if we wanted to, which I think we probably all would want to, but again, it's just, we would be imposing something that's more forgiving or whatever, if you will, than the ordinance allows us to do.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious because, so, like, it sounds like this is to avoid, you know, like we have, let's say it is like worst case, like we have 4 separate parents and then passes off to 4 separate parents. So this is to give that 10-minute window to get, so it's clear, so there's not 8 cars at once, right?
Yeah.
But there's a swimming school just down the street where they could have up to 12 cars at a time. So I guess what I don't understand.
Yeah, well, what you say makes sense, but
The
we're kind of stuck with what the ordinance says, and I think the solution to it would be to petition the city council to change the ordinance.
Yeah, the school down the street has been licensed, I think, since 2013, and so they came in under different laws, and
I'm not trying to fight.
yeah,
Sure.
and
I'm
it's
just saying technically we still are going to have less cars out front.
Sure.
So to me, I'm just like.
sure, but
And
that's where like they would essentially be grandfathered in, and yes, I think we all. I mean, as a staff member who has to deal with complaints and code enforcement issues, I have a great appreciation for how cognizant you are with how you've set things up and that you're trying to, you know, schedule things so that there's as little impact as possible.
and we would like to be accommodating to that, but because you've already sold sessions and didn't have a permit based on each of those locations, essentially that's really not our problem. That's, you know, that was a business choice that you made prior to getting the license. We could have the code amended, but that's a 90-day process.
Well, and we were also told, this came up a year ago, and we were told, go ahead and continue to operate. We know what you're doing. We understand. We appreciate what you're doing. We're working on the ordinances. You can operate without a business license. So we did last summer. And then when I saw the draft, when that was sent to me, it was the beginning of November, and they sent it to me, and I said, okay, this is what I'm concerned about. We don't have the 12 cars because we have 4 at the most. And, you know, our session's only 20 minutes long. So to give 10 minutes between each session then extends the time so much that it becomes a little bit unworkable. And they, again, I didn't write down the name of the person I spoke to. Was there somebody who was there and left in the fall?
Yeah.
A man?
Yes.
I think that might be who it was. What was his name?
His name was Lyle.
Yeah, Lyle. And it may have been Lyle that I spoke to. And I mean, I'm sure that conversation took place, but it did.
But the effect is that we have the ordinance in place that the council passed. And he may have had that conversation before the council passed the ordinance. The law is what it is. It doesn't matter what a staff said or didn't say.
Well,
it's what the ordinance says.
No, I understand that. But I also, you know, I mean, in light of the fact that we were allowed to operate without business licenses last summer, and I was led to believe that this was something that would be manageable, and I've tried to be extremely upfront with you guys about it and explain how, I mean, we're not the 12-car situation. And so I was hopeful that in light of that, I mean, we're not 12 cars and then changing for another 12 cars. We're at a maximum of, you know, maybe 5 or 6. And so it's significantly less traffic that's generated by the lessons. But, you know, I mean, we can call our sessions something different than we call them. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do.
So I'm mindful definitely of your predicament. If you just want to, just have a seat, the Hunsakers, and then if we don't typically do this, but there's not enough, there's hardly anyone here, so please come up and say your name and make your comment. Yeah.
I'm Tiffany McCreevy. We are the Turquoise House in the Circle, and like she said, this is our 3rd summer doing it, and I don't know how we would go about petitioning to change it, but I could do that. I mean, our neighbors have seen this for 2 summers, and the public notice went up again because of a reconfiguration. We have an active business license for this pool that we got last year and renewed again this year, I think. So we've had it maybe 2 years. I don't know if you can operate more sessions out of our pool because we already have the business license. It's active. I don't know.
Who's the instructors, though? Is it children or family members that are doing the instruction at your home?
Not currently, but we were given a business license anyway. I mean, we have the active license for our pool.
I think that sounds like a staff question and decision that I don't know that we can address or answer right now. I think I kind of get the spirit of your comment, and I think it's, at least in my mind, it seems acceptable, but that's just my own personal opinion. I don't know that it would be allowable under the current business licensing process or code as it stands. So, staff, do you have a comment?
Were we given our license before this condition with the 10-minute whatever? Like, were we grandfathered in then? Because no one asked me about any 10-minute whatever.
From what I understand, so you applied for this several years ago.
Yeah.
And staff at the point, so I'm new as of a year ago, and Melinda's new. So when this happened prior to me coming on, I don't think staff understood at the time, and then when it was brought to Planning Commission, I don't think the questions were never asked. Are the students your children? Are you, I don't think staff or, it was never conveyed that they are independent instructors. And so to be a major home occupation, which is what you have, it clearly states that they have to live within the home to be instructors or to have them as employees at the home.
But I mean, sorry, but to use your comment respectively, like, that's not our problem, what the staff understood and what they didn't understand.
Correct.
We have a business license to do this, right? And we were never, they gave us the license, I didn't, you know, so I mean, respectfully so. I just can say, you know, that it goes the same way. Whatever the staff understood or didn't understand.
Correct, but you as the licensee, it's your responsibility to know what the laws are and to comply with them. It's not our responsibility to tell you. So regardless of whatever the understanding were to be, if we were to come under the knowledge that you were operating a business and you weren't in compliance with all of the laws, we could do some type of enforcement or compliance measures against that business.
Even though you granted the license?
The license would be, yes, but the license is beholden to the laws that it was granted at the time. And so if it was a major home occupation, and whether or not we as staff had knowledge of if the instructors were living there or not, doesn't matter. It's still your responsibility as a business owner to comply with those laws.
So when, I guess, when was that put in? The children,
I'd have to go and,
being instructors or whatever?
well, I don't know how long.
Because were we potentially grandfathered in like the Moons were? Like, did we get our license under those same conditions, or is this a new thing?
I'd have to go and look and see when the ordinance was amended.
I just wanted to kind of offer that if you guys are in a pickle now, having sold your lessons and everything, if you need a place for more lessons, you know, or whatever, I'm happy to offer it. Our neighbors have had no problem with it for 2 summers. And I totally second what they say. It's not 12 cars. We live in a cul-de-sac, so we are probably the most compact of any of the streets that the lessons are being taught on. And we're at the very end of the cul-de-sac, so people have to drive all the way in and, you know, all the way out, and no one has ever said anything. And we've had the same neighbors, with the exception of one, you know, as a new neighbor. But anyhow, that's just my 2 cents. Just wondering if that can help you out. Anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Whoever else wants to come up, just, say your name and then add your comment.
So I'm Emily Craythorne. It's under Flinders because I just got divorced, so it's Flinders. Now it's Craythorne. Anyway, so I'm on the 942. I'm in the corner right next to the Webster's 908, like the one on Francis Circle. So the Moons are my neighbors. They've been my neighbors. We've lived there for like 6.5 years. They've always done swim lessons, and I've never had a car parked by my house, or even that I could see from my house, when the Moons are doing their lessons, which has been nice. I mean, I think they tell their people, park as close to our house as you can, you know. Haven't minded it. Last summer, the Webster's next door, 908. So I'm not 942, the blue one. 908 next door, the Webster's did swim lessons with Hunsacres last summer. And I think in late July or August, someone, Jen Savage across the street, 1232, said, oh, is that what, are they doing swim lessons? Like, she didn't even know that they were doing swim lessons until almost August. And I live next door to the Webster's. So if anyone was going to be bugged, right, it would have been me. I would have complained or something, but there was no, people didn't even know we were had swim lessons. I mean, I have friends and family that come swim in my pool and park, you know, right there on the corner on Thomas, or they park right in front of my house, or they park in my driveway. And I mean, I had more friends and family coming to swim than they did for their lessons, right? As far as traffic, that sign was out there on my corner, which is very visible to everyone in that neighborhood. And every single person asked me, what's that for? And I said, it's for swim lessons. They just need a license. And they said, oh, okay. And nobody said anything. you didn't get any calls, you didn't get any complaints. It's because they did it last year in Webster's and it was nothing. And where we're alternating like morning and afternoon, like I don't foresee any overlapping. And like she said, they can use my driveway. The Websters have a circular driveway that is separate from their driveway, an additional one. And I never saw 8 cars, not once, all summer. And I know you're like, oh, well, you have a reason to be. No, I would have complained if it would have been a problem, because I have 3 little kids that like to ride their bikes up and down the street. And we're actually like the only ones with little kids on that street. Everybody else is empty nesters. So it's a very quiet street. But that's if that's helpful at all, my perspective living there for 6.5 years, and the Moons always did lessons, and the Websters started doing it last summer, and it didn't change anything in the neighborhood. So,
thank you. That's helpful history. Yeah.
Scott Jones. I'm the owner of the 1020 Smith Lane. And just a comment on practicality and community burden. Just thinking of their time schedule of appointments in 20-minute increments, to add an additional 10 minutes, that's a 50% increase in time. So if I'm letting them use my pool for 3 hours, that now becomes 4.5 hours. And so in terms of community burden, there's 3 hours of potential traffic now versus 4.5 hours of potential traffic. So just a comment.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. So I'll just add my thoughts here. This is the predicament that I think we're in, or at least that I struggle with. Here you all are, the Hunsakers, kind of on behalf of everyone, coming in through the front door, so to speak. I mean, Miss Hunsaker is the one that brought up the fact that they aren't abiding by the 10-minute thing. Like, you didn't have to do that, and we probably would have not even. That's the sad part. Like, that's just the sad reality of a human institution, which is a municipal government. Like, we sometimes make mistakes and don't do things right or whatever. And I think, at least speaking for myself, maybe for the commission too, but for myself, it makes total practical sense to allow what you're asking for. Like, if this were a private institution and we weren't beholden to either state law that requires us to notice legislative decisions or municipal law that has whatever stricture applies, then we could just say, yeah, let's make an exception. But we can't do that as a government entity, even if we want to, because I think I would want to. If we did that, if we said, this is basically what we would have to say. Look, we know that the instructional home occupation ordinance says that the sessions have to be 10 minutes apart. Well, we don't like that law. That's what it is. It's a law. We don't like it. It doesn't make practical sense here, which I don't think it does. And we're going to set that law aside. We can't do that, even if we want to. I mean, the phrase that I've said in other contexts comes to mind. If we did that, we are then not a government of law. We are a government of men, just changing our minds despite what the law says. So that's the struggle that I think that's the predicament that we're in. We all, at least I want to say, yes, approved. Like,
I have a proposal.
Okay, go for it.
According to the ordinances, you can have 12 students.
Mm-hmm.
If we call our sessions 1 hour blocks, because in an hour we have 12 students, and then we create a 10-minute break every hour, will you approve it? So for a 3-hour pool, we're adding 20 minutes. But we're still doing it within 12 students per session. We're just dividing those sessions up so that we've got 20-minute increments.
So if you remember, though, the whole reason that we got this instructional occupation was because we don't have relatives of the residency working. And so that still is not going to work, because you're still having, in each of these individual pools, they're not relatives to the homeowners that are teaching some of the instructions, the swimming pool. So
I
it would be
understand
two
that.
different.
That isn't a problem though, right? I mean, we have permission to have non-relatives be instructors, right?
No, that's why we created this whole instructional, this ordinance,
Right,
was so
right.
that it would allow for you to have non-related instructors
Right.
working for you. And so because it was a major, swimming pools typically will come in as a major B home occupation because it's a homeowner, they've got a swimming pool, and they're going to have their 4 children or their 2 children teaching the lessons. And because we found, and that's how these other, is it McCreevy's, is that right? That's how their license, that's how this was approved and we were able to, quote unquote, get by with it because we didn't understand, it was assumed perhaps by staff that it was relatives
Right,
working.
no, I understand that. I understand that, and I really appreciate the efforts the city has gone to create this other niche that we can fit into. What I'm proposing is because within the this home instructional occupation, you're allowing a session to have 12 students, then what I'm proposing is we have 12 students in an hour. We have 4 teachers. They'll teach 3 students. They're just not, those 12 students won't be
They're just not all there at the same time.
Yeah.
She's just
But
proposing to redefine your session, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and
so-
then we create a 10-minute break. I mean, that's going to be a nightmare for us because we've got to go back through our hundreds and hundreds of parents and tell them we're making some schedule adjustments. But if we do that, I think we can be compliant with the language of the ordinance.
I mean, my gut reaction is I believe this is true. There is no definition in this ordinance of what defines a session. So certainly, if we can make it work, I'm all for that. But I guess one question that I have is, let's see if I understand. So they're 20-minute classes. Let's call it that. Okay, so you would have 3 of those 20-minute private instruction classes in an hour, correct? And the way you have it right now is you were just going to go one right after the other for I don't know how many hours.
3 hours.
So you're going to have 3 hours. So you don't have that 10-minute buffer built in, and so you would have to. That's the burden you'd have to go through. But it would at least, I guess, to say what it avoids, it would allow you to proceed under the conditional use and close enough with what you've already planned on. It would save you from the 90-day legislative process to change this. And I think, right.
I don't even know if that would do it though, because parents have such set schedules, and we're talking about me going through person calling hundreds of parents.
But the first hour can be as scheduled. The second hour is 10 minutes late. The third hour, and maybe the first hour we move up 10 minutes. The second hour is the same. The third hour is 10 minutes.
So you're proposing just to put 10-minute increments in between every hour block instead of in between every 20-minute session.
12 students each hour.
I think that meets the letter of the law.
Well, and I think we'd leave that to the interpretation of our zoning enforcement officer, whoever that is. And,
Yeah, that's a good
but
point.
it's-
That's,
but
in my opinion, meets the letter of the law.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something that could work.
But then maybe you won't like me.
No, I'm a lawyer too, and I agree with the interpretation. So,
And I think Scott raises a really good point, that if we are having to build in 10 minutes for just a 20-minute lesson, then our impact on the neighborhood becomes 4.5 hours instead of 3 hours. I don't think the neighbors would appreciate that.
and my comment on that is I totally agree, and that makes total practical and logical sense. But that is not a question for us. That's an argument to be made to the legislative body when we're changing this, right?
Right.
So we can't do that right now. We're not going to do that. You don't want to wait that long, and I understand. So we have to try to, this is me just speaking, don't, other people can say their own minds. We have to try to make something work under the law as it exists.
Right, which is why
Yes.
I'm proposing this.
I remember, yeah, we tried, we were on vacation and we tried to, because we were told that was going to be part of the law. We were in line for rides trying to hatch ideas.
Star Wars. Yeah.
And then
We were going through all sorts of configurations until I got the reassurance from Lyle.
And that's why I
And-
was by no means trying to put the cart before the horse or whatever. I have parents call me in tears on registration day because they can't get their kid into lessons with us. The city doesn't provide lessons. The cities that do provide lessons are great because they're group lessons and their teachers are poorly trained. And even with my mom's idea, I'm gonna have a difficult conversation with dozens and dozens of parents. And I take this business so seriously, and it's just like I was so ready to try to come up with an idea, and it's like I've heard enough life or death stories that we've made a difference on. I don't know what to do right now. All I can think of is like last summer, we were told that we could finish operation, and I don't know how possible it is that we can not sell any more lessons and possibly just like try to go through the process, but do 2 months kind of like we did last summer too. I don't even know if that's possible, but it's not, I don't know. I see this business as my baby, and I'm just like, I do it, and I've done it for like 11 years now myself, or 10 years, because I see the difference it makes in these kids and parents, and I don't want to have that conversation with parents. I really don't. So I just want to figure something out, because I don't think I can change, and like I don't think I can tell parents this summer when we start in a week that they can do lessons. And people, you have no idea. People drive from Morgan, people drive from Salt Lake, and I'm just trying to, if there's anything that can be done, or like that part of about last summer. I don't know. We try to follow the book so much. I just don't know this. But I understand you guys have philosophy. I'm just saying we got a part of last summer. I don't know if that's possible now. But I'll move that if
Chair, may I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Questions of the applicant. So, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're proposing. So, what you're saying is you would define a session possibly as 1 hour, no more than 12 students in that hour. So you would have, let's just use an example, from 11 a.m. to noon, one session, 12 students. That gets your 20-minute 4, 4, and 4. And then you would have another session set up at 12:10 until 1:10, and it would be another round of 20, 20, 20 in that 1 hour session. It says, our code says, here I pulled it up, but paragraph 7 says, the home occupation must be accompanied by a description of the business, including hours of operation, number of instructors, length and number of sessions, number of students per session. And so I think that does leave it open to interpretation as to what a session is. So could we consider a session from that 11 to noon, 12, no more than 12 students, you're doing the 20, 20, and 20. I think that could work. It's still, though, I don't know if that impacts with what you've already done as far as selling those sessions, which isn't, that would be on your end what you would need to do, but I think that could, it's almost leaving it up to the applicant to define what the session is, and then staff either determines whether or not that fits with, as you're saying, the intent of the law or not.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the applicant, I'm saying the city didn't define what a session is. Bad on the city.
Yep.
If you want to define what it is, go do that. But until you do that, this is our session.
Yep.
So.
Well, and generally speaking, when it's ambiguous, unclear, we try and err on the side of the property owner,
Right.
the applicant.
Right.
So.
Can a session be 3 hours? Honestly.
Now we're getting out of it.
Pam,
Yeah.
and even for all intents and purposes, your weeks are your sessions.
Well, I mean, honestly, it just
Yeah.
says you can't have more than 12 on the property at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't. So can a session be 3 hours? And then if there's complaints or concerns, we could take it to the city council.
I believe that's the zoning enforcement officer.
Because we never have more than 12. It's 4.
Yeah, and I think that is the intent of the ordinance, right? The intent of the ordinance is to mitigate the impact on the neighborhood so that you don't have, not in a community I've worked in, but I know other communities have had hordes and hordes of cars and vehicles and parents dropping off with dozens of children in a pool, and it's been a huge hassle for neighbors. And I think this is right, put in place again to mitigate that, and as long as the intent, which is no more than 12 at one time, then we have that 10-minute block in between those. I think that could work, and I out of abundance of caution, I want to say I don't want to sit here right here on the spot and say yes, this is exactly how I would interpret it, because my preference would be to talk with our legal counsel, our city attorney, about that.
Yeah.
But I also know what he would say is that ambiguity goes to, we tend to defer that on the rights of a business or a property owner. And so I think we do have some flexibility because it wasn't defined.
I can see where the intent is. If you have a single session, let's say 20 minutes or half an hour, whatever it is, but you have 12 students and they all change, in that at the end of the 20 minutes or at the end of the half hour, then you've got potentially 12 different cars coming and 12 different new ones going. So you'd have that interchange. But if you're looking at one session, then you've got maybe 4 cars coming and then 4 cars going and 4 cars.
Less impact.
It's less impact than the other session, rather than one long continuous session.
Why are we squinting so hard at something that has a less impact than what
Right.
the one neighbor is doing now?
Yeah.
For an operation that's worked for over a decade very well.
So I think if we so number one, session is not defined.
Right.
And the rationale that should support our interpretation should be broad deference to the rights of the property owner.
Well, the state code says that it's supposed to be that.
Yeah, and this is America, for crying out loud, right? So if we say a broad definition of session is a day, a 3-hour block within that day or whatever, maybe you go 4 hours, I don't know. That's your session. As long as there's not 12 students in the pool at one time during that session of the day, what's the problem?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really for us as the commission, we would just say, if we approve this or we don't, it's according to you're in line with the ordinance. We don't need to debate what this session is or not. We'll leave that up to you with the staff of the city to define what your session is, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't think we need to decide what
Sure.
her session is.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think about that until I saw that, but literally every time a parent says, should I sign them up for another session, or anytime they use the word session,
They see the whole.
talking about week.
Yeah.
Just throwing that.
Sure. sure. I mean, that's valid. Yeah, but to Cody's point, right, we just say you follow this, and then if there's, sorry, let me just say, we say you follow the ordinance, and then if there's some, let's say there was a concern brought to the city from a neighbor, then we could reevaluate it. If that never happens, then it's not a problem. Sorry, go ahead, Melinda.
I was just going to say, I know it's super annoying to talk into a microphone, but
sorry.
No, if you two can just maybe trade off when you're speaking, so
Absolutely.
it helps us when when we do our minutes, and for those who may be watching at home, and we can just get that audio recording. So I know it's one of my least favorite things to do, yet I do it every Thursday night. So. Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that. It's hard. I mean, I'll tell you, land use ordinances, it's hard. Sometimes it's very hard to get it right. This is, our first stab, and I think that we can just work with you to define your sessions so that we can have as minimal impact on the neighborhood, meet the intent of the ordinance, and maybe, even not necessarily coming up with a solution right here tonight, but know that part of the condition is that the applicant works with staff to ensure that definition of session is in line with what the intent is. Because it may be, I mean, if we can be flexible with you trying to reduce the amount of impact or what you would have to go back and do with the sessions that you've already sold. If we can figure out a way to define that, I think that would, benefit all of us.
Certainly. Yeah.
If I can, just quickly, let me read you this section out of the state code. It said, if a land use regulation does not plainly restrict a land use application, the land use authority shall interpret and apply the land use regulation to favor the land use application.
Yeah.
Well, our sessions are not very clearly defined, so you can define them just about any way you want.
Right.
It sounds like.
I mean, we can't call a session a year. I mean, I think we are. I think we're restricted by just the vocabulary, the definition of words. But there's enough wiggle room where definitely we can do, I think, what we're wanting. So here's a question maybe, and then it might turn into a motion. That I'd be willing to make if needed. If we said that, the ordinance says you could have 12 students potentially up to. If we limited it and said at any one of these pools, there can be no more than 4 students in the pool at a time, which means also 4 instructors, is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, even though we were given permission to have 5, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We think 4 is plenty. We want the students to have enough, and teachers to have enough room to teach effectively.
Yeah.
That's important to us.
Yeah. So my thought on that is if we impose that as a condition, then we're like way below the 12 threshold. So even if there is a lot, quote unquote, of traffic, it's still, what's my math? A third of what it was allowed to be, right?
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's my thought.
So is that your motion?
So
let's have Melinda say something.
Well, the code does say that no more than 4 instructors or employees may work at any given time.
It does say 4 instructors, but it doesn't limit the number of students. What we're saying is,
it says 12 students, 4 instructors.
Yeah.
So you could have 16 people, and you're only going to have 8 really. So you're half as much, right? So we're still way under that radar, I guess, is my point.
Right. Well, you could have 16 with that. You could have 4 instructors, and they could each have 3 students.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is you now only have 8 at the most.
We only have 8. Yeah, we have 4 students, 4 instructors.
Yes, right. Yeah. So
can I take a crack at a motion?
Go for it. Yes.
Good luck. Please, yeah. So I would make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit for Pamela Hunsaker for Hunsaker Swimming for an instructional home occupation. Now, we have 4 different locations, and I guess what I'm going to say is that the same motion will apply to all 4 locations.
Same condition, same motion.
Yeah, so the conditions or the motion would include that all of the provisions of the home instructional home occupation ordinance are complied with as listed, with the addition that no more than 4 students are in a given pool at a given time for instruction.
I'll second that.
We can live with that.
Okay, a motion and a second, and we will start Commissioner Doxey seconded. We'll start with Cody.
Aye.
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 Okay, is that,
Now you can you can define what your session is
Thank you.
however you want and hope that the city zoning enforcement officer agrees with that.
here's what I think happens. Now, this is not the word of the city, this is the word of Josh Sundloff. And I'm not wearing my planning commissioner hat right now. This is just Kaysville citizen opinion. If there's no reason for the enforcement officer to have to offer an interpretation, then it doesn't matter. The only time that would rise to that level is if there was a complaint and it was brought up. Chances of that happening, very slim.
Yeah, when I was in Salt Lake City, the only time the enforcement officer would go out is when there was a complaint.
Right. So just pass out a lot of cookies to your neighbors.
Just smile at everybody. They won't complain.
Well, we try to keep them happy and teach their children how to swim.
Yes,
so.
there you go.
Okay, thank you. I know this has been a bit challenging, and you've really worked to make it work for us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
And sorry you had to stay here longer than you probably planned.
Well, I think the agenda said up to 10 o'clock, so I was prepared for that. If it came to that. Yeah, I'm sure.
Melinda and Mindy would prefer it not to go that long.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, yeah.
Keep your good work going.
Yeah.
I think all my grandkids will be going.
Yeah.
One of these days.
Wait, does that mean you have a conflict, Jared?
No, I don't think there's any now, but I got 14 of them, and they're pretty close by.
Yeah, I think we've taught some of your friends.
I think you have, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So to be clear, Will,
Yeah.
that motion took care of 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, I think the intent was that was encompassing all. This is what
Yeah,
my
it was.
understood.
It's
Okay,
to be
yeah.
the same for all of the locations.
Right.
That are applied.
Instead of repeating it 4 times, it was just, right. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I like efficiency.
Okay, thank you. And now no one's here, so we have a call to the public.
It's been so long.
Good
Yeah.
to see you, buddy. You look a little taller. Yeah.
We have a call to the public, and I'm guessing we don't have any public here, so let's
They're
go
all
to the
leaving.
They're all gone.
yeah to item number 9. Anything on reports, correspondence, or calendar?
Yes, I do have a few things. If get a little bit more patience out of the commission tonight, and thank you for working through that and talking through that. I think that was beneficial.
Yeah.
Complicated, but
Yeah.
but beneficial. It would have been nice to have had that conversation offline, but I think that was a good
Sure.
outcome. That said, we interviewed last week with all the applicants for the Planning Commission vacancies that we have coming up. And Mayor Tran has done, I think, a little shifting and reallocating, trying to keep in mind some geographical diversity and then also maybe some gender diversity within the Planning Commission. So, and I think she has reached out to all these applicants already, so it shouldn't be a surprise, but we're actually going to move Commissioner Lyon to an alternate position, replacing Commissioner Page, who will be moving. Yeah, I have heard that he will be moving this summer. Rachel Lott and Krista Keach will be appointed as commissioners, and Mr. Barris will be reappointed as a commissioner. So.
Did you know that?
He's like,
Yeah.
so, Krista Keach has been on the Power Commission, and Rachel Lott has, I think, applied a few different times to serve on the Planning Commission, and then Kwan will be reassigned to the Power Commission. So we will get those appointments on the Planning Commission meeting agenda, or excuse me, sorry, the City Council agenda for the confirmation. And then those terms will begin effective July 1. So, yeah, so our first meeting in July will be July 14th. We'll swear those members in. And it was a good process, and I appreciated our two commissioners, Commissioner Lyon and Commissioner Nugent. Is that how you say it, Knight? Well,
Win.
his last name? Oh, Win. Okay, I would never have guessed that, but
It's not the first time. I'm sure he's had struggles
I'm
with
sure.
it.
So we appreciate their willingness to kind of be flexible and take some different assignments than what they've had. But that's what Mayor Tran wanted to do. Also wanted to, and Will had asked that maybe we could briefly talk about the general plan. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at that. We did talk about doing a kind of a workshop session on June 2nd. There were a few commissioners who unfortunately weren't going to be there. Given the meetings and the public hearings that we have scheduled for that evening, the request actually would be we would just put it on the regular agenda as a work item, and not have a workshop prior to the City Council meeting. So for those of you who would be here, if you would be so moved to come and participate in that work item, I think that would be beneficial.
So that'll be just like a work item for the council during
Yes,
council.
yeah, exactly. And if the commissioners wanted to come and
make
participate
comments.
in any, yeah, that.
Well, I'm
I
not,
would leave that to the
unfortunately, I'm not going to
mayor.
be here. I can send in comments, but
Yes,
I
and
won't be here.
if you do have any, I mean, now would be a great time to kind of talk through any questions or concerns you have. Hopefully you found the draft was a little easier to navigate and read through, just for the simple fact that it was about 80 pages shorter, let alone I think some of the reformatting that we did. But I don't know if there's any comments. I'll kind of turn that over to the commission to offer some thoughts on the general plan.
Can I still get a printed copy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. First of all,
I can come down.
I really like that you changed the what do you call it, the format, that it's not landscape.
Portrait.
Isn't it make a huge difference?
Yeah.
To go from landscape to portrait.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think it reads easier. It's a little easy. It's easier to understand. The policies did not change. And so from that standpoint, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, I'll bet you do. Chapter and verse, right?
Question. I confess I looked at it, but I didn't read every line. And I think I may have asked this before, and I think the answer to this is yes, but just to confirm, is there a blurb in there or something that says essentially what the purpose of a general plan is? And so what I'm thinking is it can either be used by a future commission as a shield or a sword and say the general plan is intended to do XYZ, guide decision making, not mandate it. It's not intended to be definite strictures on what decisions should be. Something along those lines. Is there something like that in there?
Let me just get this over here. So yes, there is kind of a purpose statement right up front that defines that. Let me see. But I think,
You want to put the code, the language from the state code in there
Yep.
directly somewhere, Josh, which says general plans are advisory?
Advisory, yeah.
That's exactly where I was going with that, is that I think more than that, we would have the state law and then even case law that would really dictate what the general plan is and the purpose of it. We do have a little bit of that. And just, I guess, for a way of a little bit more information, how this process worked, I essentially went through those 180 pages or whatever it was, and had pretty detailed notes to the consultant on what to remove, what to reformat, where to shift things around. There was a little bit of copy editing that they did on their own, but essentially it was me telling them what to do. So I did get very familiar with the general plan, which is good. You need your staff to be familiar with this. And then they essentially just did all of the reformatting, the graphics and everything. So it, I think, took a little bit longer than what we would have liked, but the most important outcome is that we have a plan that is usable and one that's easy to understand. And I do think this meets that. Hopefully the council will feel similarly. When I've not had any feedback from any of the council members yet, but hopefully they will feel like this is now at a point where they can adopt it.
So a lot of the tables and things that, that were taken out, and some of the background information or so on, where does that reside now?
So that's a good question with maybe not a great answer right now, because we did not include in the scope of work to have the entire appendix reformatted.
Yeah.
So I think what you want to hear is that information is not lost or gone.
Right.
It will be, we'll need to figure out how to, I think, on our own, go in and include that in the appendices. It'll end up probably being a little wonky and in the landscape format.
Well, for an appendix, I think that's fine.
Yeah, but it'll all be there.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Because I do think it's great data, it's relevant, and we don't want to lose that, because I think a lot of times that actually will be what we may refer to. That data is very helpful to refer to when we have, whether it's text amendments, rezones. One of the things that I think we will need to do once this general plan is adopted is also include in our applications for land use general plan amendment. That's not something that we have had in Kaysville, primarily because we haven't had a future land use map. So what happens if an applicant comes in and says, I want to put commercial zoning over in this area, and we look at our future land use map and it doesn't define that as commercial, not only do they need to do a rezone, they need to do a general plan amendment. And so that, because we have that element now, we would need to incorporate that into a fee schedule and have an application for that.
Yeah.
Generally, where I have worked places in the past, you can handle those items concurrently.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily lengthen the process, but it does add just another element where, and my understanding, Wolf, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that general plan amendment or adoption has to have a public hearing with both the city council and the planning commission?
It's only required by the planning commission.
Only with the planning commission?
It's not required by council.
For either a zone or the general plan amendment? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then,
but council's smart to have one.
So that would be, we would have to also set up in our code then a process for the general plan amendment, and whether or not the council would want to just leave that process then with the planning commission versus having a public hearing with them. That would be, my guess is that they would keep it the same process then that they are with the zone change. So
my personal comment on that, I don't know that, I mean, Will, you've maybe seen more than any of us in terms of what other cities have done. I don't like that because I know it exists, but I don't like it, and here's why. The main reason is if you say we need to have a general plan amendment application in conjunction with the rezone request, that essentially puts the general plan map on par with the zoning map. The idea is the general, this is kind of what my comment was about why we want this to be broad. You want to say, we don't want people looking at the general plan map and saying, oh, it says single family. It's right on the border of multifamily, but it says single family, and I can't change that.
Yeah.
That's the question of the rezone. Yeah. The general plan is just a guiding document, and the rezone legislators, the city council, will look at it and say, this is close, this is far away. They will use the plan as a guide or as a guide to the decision, but not as something that also has to get amended. That's my take.
Yeah, and like the state code does say, the general plan is an advisory guide for land use decisions.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the philosophy of the city and the officials in that city. I've seen some cities where, fine, the plan says this, but we'll do whatever. And,
it's less advisory.
Yeah. Other cities, they say they treat the plan like gospel.
See, and I don't like that. And I don't think that's the intent of the plan.
Okay, and that's your opinion.
Yes, correct.
Right? But I've seen other cities, most notably Salt Lake City, where the Salt Lake City Council would not do anything unless it was in the plan.
Yeah. See,
and if they were going to consider something, they would also require that the plan had to be changed.
To me, and I'm making this argument to the council if they're listening, and that's the only people I guess that matter, is I think that elevates the plan it gives it too much weight.
Well, and it does elevate it to that status. And I will tell you, there's been discussions in the state legislature the last couple of years to do that very thing.
Yeah.
Because and the interesting thing is that discussion has not been coming from the communities, it's been coming from developers. And because they're saying that if the plan says this, then by darn city, you ought to do it.
Yeah.
Unless
the plan says it doesn't.
Right. Yes.
Or you shouldn't do what
they want. But they're and some of us have kind of argued back and said, well, what they're trying to avoid is having fights at the rezone stage, right? Uh-huh. So they're saying, well, if your plan says this, but then we propose a rezone, but the residents come in and object to it, and the council then decides not to rezone it, they're not following their plan. So they're saying, okay, you should be required to follow your plan.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Those of us on the municipal side have been saying back to the developers, well, you're not changing the fight, you're just changing the venue of the fight. Yeah. It's not going to be at the rezone anymore, it'll be at the general plan level. So,
which in Kaysville means it doesn't go to the elected body, sounds like, unless we change that. It would just stay at the planning commission.
Well, I mean, the council will ultimately have to approve. It's the council that adopts the general plan.
Well, no, what I'm saying is a general plan amendment. You just said it only requires to go at the planning commission level.
Only have a hearing.
Oh, a hearing. You're right. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, but the council would have to adopt.
The council still has to adopt it. Yeah.
But I can go on both sides of this argument to what you said, because in theory, and I actually really I agree with Wilf, we need to strongly reference that data that informs the plan and make that as a clear appendix.
Yeah.
Because that data is what informs the plan, and so maybe the general plan should have more weight because it has more relevant citizen input, more recent citizen input.
That's why I would put a greater weight on it.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Wide input. When you're doing a rezone, what you usually get is the residents that live right around it.
Yes.
Not the entire community, which is what the plan is supposed to reflect.
Sure. Yeah. I have been persuaded.
Good work, Wilf.
Thank you.
I might have to go back and rewatch that so I can understand what you were persuaded to.
Okay.
Go back and watch that.
Yeah.
Just to kind of confirm, where you've gone with this, maybe to give you a little comfort level. So I was just recently talking to a colleague of mine who is now working as the planner for Morgan City. And they're in the process of revising their general plan, and it was the same consultants that did our plan here that did theirs. And they're going through exactly the same struggle, can I say that we had, which is they're saying, there's too much stuff in here. We need to move some of this out and make the plan itself more direct. And and I didn't tell them to do that. That's something they came to the conclusion on their very own, which tells me, okay, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Must be those consultants.
And I'm sorry I know the consultants, and I apologize to you guys if you ever listen to this, but it is a lesson.
Yeah, and I think the data was excellent, the data was relevant, but it is supposed to be a general plan, and and I think too, the jump that we were going to from our 9-page plan to a substantial general plan, what most other communities have, is a big jump. It may be more relevant in the future to have some of that. There was a lot of information in there that I think, and perhaps the intent was to try and meet some of the state code requirements with the moderate income housing, but there's a lot of information in there that just really isn't relevant to land use from the perspective of what a general plan's purpose is for and what a tool it is for staff to use. Developers may need to know that information, may want to know that information, but it shouldn't be information that's driving our decisions or guiding a developer in a certain way, because we're listening to our residents in our community with that plan. But I do feel that it is a lot more usable. There was a lot of data in there that just wasn't relevant, I think, to development patterns of land. Maybe relevant in some context, but not necessarily to how would I in community development apply this as far as implementing code or guiding people who do come in and say, hey, here's our property, what can we do with it, or what should we do with it? It just wasn't helpful, and so removing that data was, I think, a good move, and it's what the council ultimately directed us to do, is to keep it simplified and condense some of that information.
So that meeting will be June 2nd, 7?
Yes, and I had an email up today to, I confirmed this afternoon what the format of that meeting will be. I will send an email out to the entire commission. I think I'll actually include our commissioners that will be appointed so that they could come and maybe learn a little bit. Just for your information as well, June 2nd, that will be the night that the rezone for 492 North Flint and 602 South Angel will be on the agenda. So my guess is that it would be a longer meeting, and I think we generally have the work items towards the end of the meeting. I could pull up the agenda and look at that.
I'll plan to show up at 10 then.
Yeah, so it may be a later night, but if you have any comments, concerns about that, I'm more than happy to take a phone call, sit down with you. I do also want to point out, if I can find where the future land use map is real quick here. There was 2 requests that I received kind of, I guess, after the fact of this now very pixelated map, but the property owners that own this property right here, right above the Smith store, are wanting that to be shown on the future land use map as mixed use instead of residential. And so that was going to be a request that I told them that I would take that to the council.
They want it to be shown as what?
Mixed use.
Mixed use. So.
Yeah, instead of residential. And then there was another property, the Symphony Homes owns down, I think, is it down in this area here? I went and looked back at my notes. I didn't have an address written down, but they were wanting to have like multifamily shown there, and so I need to get back in touch with the applicant.
Probably that red.
Is that the vacant lot that hasn't been built?
I'm guessing it's right.
Is this the Equestrian Center?
This doesn't work. That's the school.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. So
Is
I'm
it
guessing
down
it's
here
right
then?
here. This doesn't work. Because there's townhomes galore right here in Farmington City.
yeah.
That's vacant. I mean, that's where I don't even know if that's where Symphony owns.
It was nearby that, and I'm so sorry, I'm ignorant on this, but
But I mean, isn't UDOT planning, I mean, I've heard
the equestrian
plans for doing an
development down
interchange.
There, I think there is
That's where the
plans.
Yeah.
exit is, right?
It's
off Life.
just a matter of
they're in
time.
the process, aren't they? Doing an environmental assessment or something of it, yeah.
See where Burton Lane comes down? Burton Lane comes
That would
down and
make
goes
sense,
back.
but kind of
Yeah.
housing there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was property near the Sunset Equestrian, so.
Oh, so then it's right around there. Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they had wanted to see if the council would be amenable to that.
We saw something, it wasn't multifamily, but it was R like 110 or something.
Yeah, it was
In
pretty
that, those
identical.
fields back there, and of course,
The neighbors came out and forth.
neighbors didn't like it. Surprise,
Well, and
surprise.
Said it was a
unfortunately-
traffic issue more than a density issue.
Okay.
How do you handle that traffic so they don't all drive through the neighborhood?
Sure.
That's what they were up in arms about.
And it's hard coming in as staff at the very tail end of this process and
Yeah.
not having that context, the benefit of those conversations. So the council, it's their prerogative. But those were really I think the only two changes, and I don't know if I would really call those substantive, but those would be the only two changes that I think would really, that have been requested that would be of any substance.
I guess not that it really matters at this stage. Maybe it does if the council's listening. That behind Smith's, that makes sense to me, because if you just have Smith's and then boom, single family residential, that's not a break. That's not a transition. That if you have mixed use there, it maybe makes transition space, which I think that is totally a natural conducive spot.
It's an effort to make it a walkable community, you know, where you have Smiths and those other businesses right there as well.
And you've got the trail right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, you could create a good buffer and a very, successful thing right there, I think.
Yeah, well, and you do have the mixed use.
Yeah.
That's just right across Flint. And so, that's, I think that would be a good move to make.
Yep.
Not sure about the other request, but that's the prerogative of the council, so.
Makes sense. Okay.
And I do think that there is language in here that does state too that the future land use map isn't supposed to necessarily have like really hard boundaries within it. So, like this parcel, yes, and this particular category in this parcel right next door, that's where we draw the line. So I think there is intended also to be a little bit of flexibility with that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Calendar?
Oh, one question. Anything happening on the proposed amendment for the appeals process?
Yes, nothing is happening on
Okay.
that.
I'm happy to help out with that. Trouble is I'll be gone for a few weeks now.
We just need to have a little bit of break in all the applications that we've had to catch our breath to get
No, I get
those.
that.
Because I still have we'd still like to do the text amendment for the model homes, for the explosives, and then for the appeal process. So it just.
Well, at least it's alive still. Right?
We don't have, our June 9th meeting at this point, I think is a little bit lighter, so honestly, part of it is failure for me because when I finally let me work on that, we haven't published a notice to have it on the agenda for the amendment, so we could do a work
As long as you
session
know
on
that
it,
it's something,
but yeah,
you
it's
kind of have it on the list.
on the
I think
list, and
that's
we
good.
will get to it.
Yeah.
So that's all I had. I don't know if anybody has anything else.
Okay. I know I'm not the official chairman, but I'm going to try to set a precedent and propose that this is how we end future meetings. We usually have like some willy-nilly motion. Let's have the chair just say motion adjourned or meeting adjourned.
Gavel.
Yeah.
Amen.
I like
Okay,
that.
so there you go. Meeting adjourned.
Simple. What did the city council think of the Johnson property?
That's next.